right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Mark Nunnikoven, and I'm the VP of Cloud Research at Trend Micro. We appreciate your attendance here. I'm just going to do a quick little intro and get out of your way, because really you're here to listen to this gentleman here, Jason Craddock from Pivvot. I've had the privilege of knowing Jason for a couple years. Fantastic technologist, excellent leader in our community, and he's got a phenomenal story that he's going to tell you today. The good news is that story is absolutely 100% true, so it makes it an even better story. Because a few years back, you're going to find out that Jason was in what we would all consider very, very traditional IT. Everything that is not cloud, is not cloud native. If you watch the keynote this morning with Andy, everything that Andy's talking about where you want to be, Jason was not there in the organization. Personally, he was, which is why he's led his team to this point, but he's in a very traditional IT delivery department, and to make things worse, in a very conservative vertical, which is why I think this story is absolutely especially unique, to see where he's gone from that traditional approach to IT delivery to a really fantastic cutting-edge, purely cloud-native model. And without further ado, let's welcome Jason and listen to this great story.
Thank you. Thank you. So not all of it's true. It couldn't be, right? But I'll embellish a little bit, but not much. So thank you for coming out and listening to us talk. My name is Jason Craddock, Senior Director of Technology at Pivvot. But that's not where really our story started, right? It wasn't at Pivvot, so we'll get to that. But the things I want you to think about as we have this conversation today is, like Andy said, it's about transforming. And we've been lucky enough to trip our way and fall through some transformations, and we found our way, and it's gone really well for us. And I'll tell you that transformation story. But transformation doesn't come without obstacles, right? It's not easy. It was really hard for us. So I'm going to tell you about some of the obstacles we ran into and maybe help you avoid some of those landmines. And hopefully it's useful. But finally, the thing that I think is most valuable to us is that through this experience of transformation and overcoming these obstacles, the winning at the end of this is just the opportunity to be prepared. And preparation to us, as IT professionals, is always like, whoa, what's going to happen next? What's the next outage? What's the next vulnerability? What's the next, I love you virus? Whatever those things are. But because we've gone through this transformation, we've embraced these obstacles, we feel more prepared and ready to take on what's next. So I come from an IT background. I do not work for Gartner or Forrester or any of those things. So this is my cloud adoption lifecycle. And it went from what we call kind of cloud curious, where we're we heard about the cloud, we want to try it, what does this do, how does it work? And we successfully got through that stage, and we were like, shoot, that's pretty cool. What else could we do? And then we were cloud comfortable, right? So we got into this cloud comfortable phase, and now we're building, we're fast, we're deploying, it's fun. And then finally, we took another step and became cloud natives. And I'll tell you that was only in the last couple of years. And the blue lines certainly represent a stair step up for how much our bill has gone up in Amazon, but also really in how much our maturity has gone up. Because with that bill going up also is the opportunity for us to make a difference in our organization. And I really mean that. I think it's meant a lot to our org. So as Mark detailed, I come from a very stodgy industry and with a very stodgy company. So this is a real picture of a company that I started at, and this is a company called Wilbros. I bet many of you haven't heard of it unless you're from Houston or Tulsa or work in the oil and gas industry. And oil and gas is traditionally very stodgy, especially in the midstream industry, where it's really about transporting oil and natural gas to make sure that we keep people warm in the winter and cool in the summer, right? So it's all about energy transportation. Now, Wilbros is a 110-year-old company, right? Been around for a long time. All of the executives and board members were old white dudes with gray hair, right? And we got to know these guys really well. I started there as kind of a shadow IT function, working in IT service delivery, and worked my way up to CIO because of a lot of the story that I'm going to tell you today. But at Wilbros, you can see it's so old, right? This brand, the W, right? One of the greatest stories about Wilbros was It kind of looks like Warner Brothers, right? And actually, that logo for Wilbur's predates Warner Brothers. And so Warner Brothers came and they were like, hey, you stole our logo, trademark infringement. We're like, we had it before you. And that's kind of the claim to fame for Wilbur's. But really, Wilbur's was a company that was a proud tradition of building some of the toughest infrastructure projects in the world. Building oil and gas pipelines, worrying about safety of the people building it as well as the environment around it. It was an honor to work for that organization. I'll tell you a little bit about how it went. At the time, we were focused on, we had 4 data centers, 1 co-location facility in Houston, 1 data center in Tulsa, 1 in New York, and 1 in Seattle. And all on-prem, even Exchange. This was like 2012 when this journey started. And all of that was where we were, right? So we cared a lot about ERP, CRM, all that kind of stuff, mapping printers and file shares. And we were an IT group, right? And the way that IT group looks is something like this, right? You have a CIO, and the CIO has business systems that worry about CRM or ERP. We have an infrastructure and operations team focused on data center, racking and stacking servers, keeping the lights on, those kind of things. And then the security team, right? Because we needed to protect everything we have. And then service management, right? We need to license things. We need to respond to help desk tickets. We need to just support the organization for their IT needs, right? Very traditional model, right? Like, this isn't weird. And inevitably, you go through this life cycle of building, and what happens, right? Somebody comes to you and says, hey, we need this, whatever the server is, a web server that does this thing, and you say, no problem, Mr. Internal Customer. How big does it need to be? How many server or cores do you need? How much memory do you need? And they look at you like, what are you talking about? I need a server, right? And then you're like, well, okay, I'll take all of your requirements, we'll put it together, we'll build it, right? And in a month, we'll have a server, we'll put that server in, it'll be in our rack, and then we deploy it, and then we monitor it, right? And it's IT. So what happened in our business back then was that scenario came up, right? And our president came to me and said, hey, we have this idea for a customer, and we want to take this customer and we want to host some data for them, right? We're an engineering services business, right? So we sell hours for a living, or we sell construction, right? So large capital asset construction. So president comes to me of our engineering business and said, hey, we want to host some data for our customers. I'm like, no problem. We got a data center in Tulsa. We have room in the rack. You're lucky. We have power whips already, the crack units. We got everything you need. Get all these requirements, and I'm going to add 20 to 30% because I don't really think you know what you're talking about, right? Like how big this scale needs to be. So I add in a little extra because we might repurpose it later. You got the budget open, right? You play these games. And I said, in a month, you can have your server. And he said, a month? Like the whole project's 3 months. We only have so much money, and you're saying it's $20,000 to put a server in, all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it's in a month, right? You're welcome. And he's like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work for me, right? So he challenged us to think a little different. And so we said, well, we heard about this Amazon thing. Let's try it. So me and one other guy, and really he did all the work, I just did all the talking, and he built this environment, all right? And he set it up and made it successful. And I'll share with you the architecture on the next slide. But we got to really get into the cloud, and we're like, this is great, it's professional, it's not that bad, it's pretty cool. Well, this is what the architecture looked like. I'll walk you through it, it's very technical. But we had an instance. Some things not depicted on this picture. There was security group. And we did things like we were really worried about security, so we did like 3389, but we're going to whitelist it to our IP so nobody can get it. And we're going to allow IAS like 80 and 443 out to the world so our customer can get to it, right? So we did that kind of stuff. And of course, we care about security, so we put an antivirus on it, right? I mean, we were set. And we did that work, just the 2 of us, and for 10 users, for around a month and a half, they used the service, and the project was over, and we shut it off. And it gave us a point to reflect. My president was like, so we were going to spend $20,000 to buy a server, to rack it, to put it in the, we're going to have this asset that then hits depreciation across the line, or we spent $500. Like, Jason, what are you doing? Why did I, the president, non-technical guy, have to tell you to do this? And I respect that, right? So through that, we said, maybe we should think about this more. Maybe we should think about like what else we could be doing in the cloud. It really opened our eyes. But before we could do that, we really wanted to stop and reflect. What are some of the obstacles we ran into, right? The first obstacle, I think, was around trust, right? We were good at building data centers. We were good at managing them. We didn't have like uptime problems. We didn't have these kind of things, right? But inevitably, things do break, right, as Vogel has told us, right? So we got this idea, or we started reading about the shared responsibility or shared security model is what they call it. I call it the responsibility model, right? Because what shared security model tells you is like Amazon's going to take care of the physical security, guards, gates, and guns, those kind of things, and you have to manage your operating system up, right? I think about it as much more than that, because as we start to trust Amazon with our infrastructure needs and all that kind of stuff, it's really about sharing the responsibility, because it's not just about shared security, it's about all the other things you do that you're trusting them about. And so we built this idea that we had to lean in and accept that they're just going to take care of it for us. And there's a really good quote from one of our leaders in Hauppauge, New York, who said, man, if things are going to go down, I'm going to see it on CNN before you get the alert on your phone, right? And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And that idea that we just trust them implicitly is tough as IT professionals because we're skeptical people. But at the same time, Amazon kind of knows what they're doing. And certainly they give you things like the well-architected framework and shared security model to help you do it well. And so we started going down that path. The next major problem we had was our CFO. Does anybody have CFO problems in getting funding? We certainly did. And our CFO problem back then was like, dude, we need to buy trucks and backhoes and winches and all this hard iron, this physical equipment in the world, and you also want all these servers, right? To manage, to keep updated. You want to replace them every 4 years, 5 years, something, you know. And he wanted us to like, just status quo, man, right? Like, we use CapEx, your depreciation hits your bottom line, your budget, and you deal with it. And through that, we were like, yeah, but we spent $500. And our CFO was like, yeah, I don't really care, because the $2,000, $20,000, and you depreciate over this amount of time, it's going to be fine, right? So we really were tripping with, like, how do we fund using cloud? And what we did, because we're an engineering service business model, right? So we sell hours. So we would, for a customer project, we would say, 700 hours, right? And you take the 700 hours and we're going to charge you, let's say, $100 an hour because it's my time, versus some of these people get paid much better because they're professionals. So we said, well, what if CFO, what if you're going to charge the customer $100 an hour? What if we actually charge them $100 in a quarter, right? And that way, our allocation model goes instead of, I guess a traditional allocation model in business, you guys might have this, right, in IT groups. We would take, Wilbur's was around 10,000 people. Our budget was close to $10 million for IT. And so we would take that $10 million and we would divide it by the number of people we have. And then in this division or business unit, they have 1,000 people. So we're going to charge them 1,000th of that percent, right? That's how we reallocate our funds. Traditional IT reallocation of funds, right? Well, now, as we move to the cloud, it doesn't work like that. You won't just take your Amazon bill and chop it into a thirds or fourth and like start to do that. So we really wanted to drive down to, like, if you're going to spend an hour on that project, you're also going to spend an extra quarter or two to support the IT infrastructure. So we challenged the IT allocation model, and it was very successful because we started to look at using our CFO's terms, like we're selling T&M. This is just an M. It's just a material. There's no reallocation. And after a couple cycles, he really got into it because at the time it seemed really scary. Like, wait a minute, that means our customers are paying more. And we said, not really, right? Because your depreciation, how you reallocate those dollars back to IT, that's going to go down as well. Instead of 10 million, we're reallocating it straight to the projects. It's going to cost you less. Luckily, I was right. But otherwise, I wouldn't be up here today. So that was a big challenge for us. And it was solvable by using their language, the CFO's language, to get to allocation of funds and using the common unit of measure of T&M for our business. The next challenge I would tell you about is purpose. In IT, our purpose has been to serve the customers, keep the lights on, right? Those kind of things, really sexy and cool, and that's what we want to do, right? You guys are really excited to like keep the lights on. That's not what I was not passionate about that. I'm a geek. My name is Jason, I'm a geek. And I like Legos, right? You guys have kids, you like buy Legos and like so you can build them. I do that kind of stuff. And I take stuff apart at home because that's who I am. I'm a geek. And what I got to this point of this challenge of, yeah, but you're supporting internal customers, you respond to help desk tickets, you have SLAs for how long it takes you to respond, and uptime percentages, how many nines in your data center. You have all those things to worry about, and it gets very operationally and transactional, and you start to worry about these things. But none of it's fun, right? I like to build. I like to do new stuff. I want to contribute. I want to add value to the business. So we really got into this problem of there are people who just want to keep the lights on. And that's OK. We need those people. Thank God for those people. But that's not who we were. This team that I've been lucky enough to work with is builders. And we like to try new things. But we're IT people. So we don't write code. We don't do any of those things. But we like to build. And so our challenge of what our purpose was in the business really became, how do we make the business more successful? How do we help the business use technology? So we changed our mission in IT. Instead of keeping the lights on and SLA management, we really said, how can we help the organization use technology to create differentiation? Totally changed the way we look just by having a different purpose for our organization. Not a challenge directly, but absolutely an opportunity, is as we got into the cloud, speed became a problem. Absolutely a challenge. At first, it was addicting, right? It took a month, ship a server, put it in a rack. Racking servers is fun. Everybody enjoys that, right? But now I can just click on it, and it comes up in a couple minutes, right? And that speed, it's kind of like when you first started using VMware back in the day, right? And it was like, man, I can just run it. But now you don't have to worry about capacity on the back end. You don't have to worry about, do I have enough disk and CPU to share between the VMs? I can just go build. And that was so empowering to us, but it comes with a huge problem as well. Because with all that speed, you can kill yourself, right? You start to sprawl out. It's so easy, but yeah, we'll kick up another server. What's the problem, right? And it's really hard to manage. So speed was absolutely an opportunity to us to make a bigger difference in the world, but it was also a huge challenge for us because we couldn't just couldn't let it go, right? We had to do cost management hacks on the back end. How do we manage it? How do we keep everybody going? And at this time, on the next slide, I've got another architecture slide I'll show you. But at this time, we're still getting this cloud curious phase, but about into cloud comfortable. But we had hundreds of instances of EC2 instances out there, and only 3 people to manage, and one of them was me, and I don't do anything. So it was really tough for the team to keep up and manage it, and that speed of deployment and access and getting people to use your service internally was really difficult for us. So with that, there was tools that helped us, right, along the way. But before we talk about those tools, right now, just think, speed can be bad. It can hurt you. So this is the architecture as we started to move into cloud comfortable. As you can see, we have firewalls and IDSs, right? We had EC2 instances running Snort and running IP chains, right? And now we can create a DMZ in the cloud, very secure. And then we have our back-end, front-end services, our database. But then we also, on the right, we have those 2 boxes, security and event logging. What I mean by that is like, you have servers or services in your data center, in your clouds, right? And you might have a server running like antivirus software, right, to keep it centralized. And at this point in our cloud curious, as we was transitioning into cloud comfortable, we started with a different strategy. And we said, SaaS at all costs. If we can do it in SaaS, that's what we want, because that's what, like, those things don't add value to our business, right? My company at Wilbur's didn't make a dime because we secured it very well. So we wanted to transactionalize all that away, just get all that commoditized kind of stuff off of our plate so we can focus on our use case and the things that do add value to our business. So we took security and we said, get it out. And we went to this company, it's no surprise, called Trend Micro, to use deep security as a service so they would manage all of the back end and we would just get the robust software on our servers. We did the same thing with event logging, our SIM, to do incident management and correlation with Sumo Logic, and we pushed that out into their cloud, so we don't have to manage the storage to maintain all of that. And one of the cool things we learned about, I guess I would tell you, we're not, it sounds like we're really good at this. We're not. We're not. And I actually talked to our Amazon rep back then, and I said, hey man, look at the cool stuff we're doing. We're putting security, we're really worried about security and building it. And he said, you got to talk to these guys at Trend Micro. And I said, yeah, we got antivirus, right? We're like, we got it, we're set. And he's like, no. All the security. So we said, all right, well, tell us more, right? And this is what we eventually got to was they will manage the as-a-service part of the security software, so we don't have to worry about another server to manage, maintain, to patch, and keep up to date and those kind of things. They take care of it. But because of that, it also challenged the way we architect. And the way we architected in the cloud, we would have a DMZ built like that in a public VPC. And then we said with Trend Micro, Deep Security, they do have this opportunity to put host-based firewalls, host-based IDS, and file integrity management on the instance, right? And so then we could challenge the way we architect because now we don't need to add extra servers to manage those things. It's directly on the host. And this is important, and I'm not trying to sell Trend, although I do like them and they're a great service. But the point is, by embracing SaaS software, we were able to challenge the way we architected in the cloud as well. So that trust, that shared security model or shared responsibility model, turns into how you actually design and build all of your servers and all of your architecture. And it wasn't just trusting Amazon, right? It was trusting Trend and Sumo Logic and other vendors to help us in this journey. And that was so important to us. So we grew and grew and grew, and we were killing it. We were absolutely killing it. Wilbros was doing great. We were making a lot of money. Our customers were happy because we're creating digital differentiation for us to embrace our customers and collaborate with them a little closer. And you guys come to this conference and you guys hear about elasticity, right? And the idea that you get a server when you need it and you don't pay for it when you don't, like elastic compute and those kind of things. Well, the funny thing about elasticity is markets are also elastic. And in oil and gas, it's incredibly elastic, right? As you can see, the price per barrel goes up and down. I told you this story started around 2012. Good times in oil and gas. We were doing pretty good. The story took a turn right around here, right? And at that point in time, oil and gas wasn't doing so well. The outlook was even worse. And so Wilbros started to say, a multi-billion-dollar organization said, we need to start selling business units to keep afloat, right? They had grown and grown and grown, and they had taken on new businesses and taken on those things. And we sort of said, oh man. At this time, I was CIO. I was helping divest businesses in New York and Seattle. And eventually they got around and said, hey, we want to sell our engineering business out of Tulsa. And that business was the one that was using all the cool technology, right? They got to play in the cloud, they got to design all this stuff, and they weren't worried about ERPs and CRMs and printers and plotters and stuff like that, right? They weren't worried about plotters, but they were. but at this time in our life, I said, you know what? I want to go with that divestiture. And so I exited as CIO and I went to a new company, and that company was called TRC. TRC is an amazing company, even still today. They are a multi-billion-dollar organization as well, privately held, growing business. I just kind of ruined it. I said privately held. That doesn't say that on this slide. That's a story I'm going to tell you here in a second. But TRC was an engineering business only. They didn't do any construction. They focused on how do we build, how do we take care of the environment and physical assets, water management, oil and gas. How do we care about the environment, care about what we build? And because of their leadership, we continued to invest in technology and invest in differentiation that we can help our customers build pipelines safely, caring about the environment, caring about the people around the asset, because inevitably people will live around the asset. And TRC is a great organization that really focuses on the environmental impact of physical infrastructure and how we can take care of that industry, or how we can take care of the world we live in, but continue to keep people warm in the winter and cool in the summer. So TRC was a great new home for us. And in that, I told you I left. I was CIO. Excuse me. I was CIO of that organization, and I came out to TRC, and I was no longer CIO. But I had to work with the CFO. And that's an interesting problem to have. So the organization kind of looked like this. So the CIO had the same problem sets, right? Business systems, infrastructure and operations, security, service management, very traditional, very obvious. That's how IT works. And then there was my team, the shadow IT team. And that's a weird conversation to have with the CIO around, hey guys, you're going to report to us, right? Because we're IT, you're going to report to us in this new org. And our president said, no, no, they are not IT. They are technologists building differentiation for our business. And by that, he said they are separate. The president said they're going to focus, not worry about IT, don't have to rack and stack servers anymore, and now we're going to focus. And that's what we did. And that is a tough problem to do, to embrace going from IT to shadow IT, to be that other side, to be the evil empire of IT. But we did it. And of course, the first challenge to that is trust. Because the shadow IT functions are there, and we hide things, right? We like keep it private, keep it secret, keep it ours, right? And the CIO is like, wow, we're better than you. And so it made for really weird conversations where the CIO was like, hey, we have this really cool ML-based antivirus. You're going to have to install it on your servers. Or we use this vendor, for cloud and use that vendor for cloud. So you're going to have to go with us, right? You're going to have to follow our standards. And that's a really tough problem to solve, right? I mean, to just jump in and allow them to dictate to us. And the conversation kind of went like this. They said, use our antivirus, use our standards. And we said, no, we don't want to do that, right? And it wasn't malicious. It wasn't angry, right? It was we got to a point of being cloud comfortable where we were like, guys, it doesn't matter what the brand of the box is because we don't care. It does not matter. What we care is it fast? Is it cheap? Does it meet the requirements? We're focused on a different problem domain than standards and command and control. We're focused on how are we solving problems for our business. And through that relationship, we decided instead of being shadow IT and hiding things, we would share them. So we started a rhythm. And we don't even like the shadow IT idea anymore. We call it collaborative IT. And the idea is that we are focused on IT problem domains, no question, but we are focused on a very specific outcome where the IT group is focused on a very different outcome. But we should share because we can learn stuff from them and they can learn stuff from us, right? And so through that, we built, with Trend Micro's help, our hybrid security because they came to us and said, we have antivirus and we want you to do these things. And we said, we do these things. And as we shared it, they said, holy cow, we need that. We don't have that in our data center. How can we do that? So through that collaboration, we got to share some of our experiences and learn, and they got to share some of theirs, and we could learn. And it created a really good working environment to where it wasn't combative at all. It was just about transparency and collaboration. They had their domain. We didn't really care about what they did. That was a big problem for us, and it took a long time to overcome. And it never really gets perfect, right? But it took a long time, and we feel pretty good about it. The next challenge in this cloud comfortable phase was coding. I grew up as an IT guy, right? I was an MCSE. I could right click and solve problems like nobody's business. But the problem with that, right, is that speed problem I told you about really comes up to catch you. And if you're pointing and clicking in the console and you happen to click the wrong security group, I've never done this, and change it, that's a bad thing, right? I've never done it. That guy in the red shirt has. But it's a problem, right? And so we really started to challenge ourselves to not point and click in the console anymore through some problems, and instead focus on code. And how could we do that with CLI and API calls and things like that? And really embracing the CLI for Amazon, we started to get into it, and we thought, this is pretty cool. We can script deployments, and deployments means something different. Let's just level set. Deployments at this time meant it would create a server for us, not build everything else at this point in our journey, right? But it would build those things for us. So we could script some of the deployments of build, and that was really cool to us. But learning to code is hard, right? I mean, I've got a CS degree and I couldn't code, and you still don't want me to code. But it takes time and you can learn. You just have to train yourself a little bit. It was a big challenge for us. It was very scary, but we kind of leaned in a little bit, moved to the left of ops, right? And start to look at how we could write code to really help ourselves move faster, right? In a fast world. The other opportunity for us was this learning new tools. And this is totally an embracing thing for us. When you move to the cloud, you can kind of take some of your traditional tool sets with you. And that's cool. but it's not fun, right? I mean, again, I like to build, I like to explore, I like to learn, and inevitably, you get stuck in these old tools, right? And there's all sorts of really cool new tools that we've done with data visualizations and things like that. But I think the best story around this learning new tools, right, is I was in MCSE. I had a great PC. It was awesome. And I would come to these conferences with you geeks, and I would learn that you guys all use Macs. And I would be like, shoot, I'm not cool. And I really want to be cool. So I got a Mac, right? And I was like, holy cow, this is fun. Like, using my computer's fun. I don't reboot it ever, right? Like, it just works. And that's kind of the idea of the cloud, right? It just works. And now we've gone completely from a Microsoft shop to a Windows shop, or a Mac shop, excuse me. And it's a funny story, right? But it's this willingness to embrace new technologies and change that has really transformed our business and really caused us to move in a different direction. It's inspiring, really, I mean, to get to play with some new tools, learn it quickly. Another great story, at this phase of TRC, we would rapidly build stuff, right? And because of our costing model, project managers, like who run these projects, could come to us and say, at any time, and they could add cost to our problem, right? Because they could say, like, we have a project, we need you to do this, and those project managers could be empowered to spend IT dollars. Before, in the reallocation money, you'd have to go through a budgeting process, right? Not anymore. Because now, they could just be like, yep, we reallocate funds by adding additional dollars to our projects. Now project managers. So your opportunity for new customers was incredible to us. Internal customers was incredible to us. And so they came to us once and they were like, we need a document management system. And I thought, cool, that's like a 3-year project, right? And they were like, no, we need it like in a couple weeks, right? And through this idea of learning new tools, we started to explore. We tried 4 or 5 different open source or paid trials, and we went through it. And because we were so interested in learning, we found one we liked, we built it, we deployed it on a project, and that project was a major success. But it was all because we leaned in, and we're like, let's learn, let's try something new, right? But that mentality of trying new things, trying new tools, challenging the status quo, that's the kind of technologists we wanted to be. And inevitably, you have to learn something new, and learning new tools is a big part of that. Other tools that really enabled us to be successful were things like IDEs and Bitbucket pipelines and CI/CD, those kind of things. Those are foreign to IT people, right? I mean, the whole terminology of the development process was very foreign to me as an IT professional, right? But you have to learn those things, and learning those new tools has changed the way we look at things. But of course, as we have developer and operations kind of people, we have problems. And the biggest problem we had was fence throwing. You guys know fence throwing, right? Like, developers like, works on my machine, go build it, right? And that works really well until it doesn't. And then what happens, right? As an ops professional, you're like, man, I want to keep it up, I want to keep it running, I want to keep it going. So I need to call a developer and get him off of the floor. He's no longer writing code, he's supporting it in operations because he's the only one with the knowledge to do so. And we found ourselves in this trap of fence throwing. Works on my machine, and you get it to the other side, and they're like, well, you do this, and then it comes back around, and it just keeps going. It's an endless cycle, and it's not productive. Absolutely not productive, and it's frustrating, right? Because if only the ops guys knew how to write it or build it and run it, and if only the developers knew how to build it at scale and operate it and secure it, we wouldn't have this problem. But we do. And the funniest story around this is what I like to call what done means. And in operations, right, IT ops people, we got some IT ops people, right? In IT ops, right, thank you. We have this problem of what's done mean? It means that, like, the customers can use it. It's deployed. It's ready to go. What we learned really quickly in developer terms, done doesn't mean that. Done means it does what the Jira card said it should do, right? Those are very different things. And there was a full-on argument between me and my product manager who runs our development shop and said, like, no, it's done. And I said, it's not ready. Like, we can't do this. And it was a great argument just around what done actually means. But it's these kind of conversations that really helped us. Passionate arguments about what done means and what our customers need. It was incredible for us. So we had to get rid of fence throwing, and it was hard. It was very difficult. And it's a continuous process today. The next kind of problem with cloud that we really ran into was sprawl. And sprawl is, like, just like in VM, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, people could just build and build and build and build, right? And it's all over the place in different AZs, and I'm sure you guys don't give like developers access to the console because that'd be rude, right? That's not good. But we did, and all of a sudden you find servers everywhere. You just find stuff everywhere. And inevitably you need, as a security professional, as an ops professional, you need to know where that stuff is. So we started to create ground rules, guardrails for our or for our developers for how they could build. We wanted them to explore, try new tools, learn new things, right? But we didn't want to lose visibility and control of those things because we needed to protect it. We needed to secure it. So we helped build those guardrails and help get them set up. And one of the greatest things, and again, I'm not trying to sell Trend Micro, and because they don't sell this, so Trend Micro people, close your ears, but they have this thing called the Cloud Connector. And it's free, like you don't have to pay for it. But the cool thing about it to me was always that I can connect it at the API level to my infrastructure, and I could see all of my infrastructure. No matter what region it was in, no matter what it was tagged with or not tagged with, no matter what, I could see it. And I could see, does it have our agent installed? Does it have the security policies installed? Those sort of things. And that visibility was invaluable, and that's not even what they sell the tool for, right? But it's an interesting byproduct that allowed us to be more successful and gain the visibility we need. So it was an opportunity for a tool to help solve that problem for us. So after we get cloud comfortable, this is what our architecture kind of looked like. We had the direct connection at the bottom there that connects into our corporate data center. We had these Amazon workspaces, which is a VDI environment that allowed us to collaborate and share work across many sites across the United States. And then we had at the top kind of our primary use case, which is what we built originally with that one server back in the day. And then we started to move all those things, right? We used Trend Micro because as a service offering to help secure all of our infrastructure. We used Druva to help back it up. We used Atlassian to deploy and Sumo Logic to do our SIM as event management and correlation, and Ansible to help us script and deploy these things. So we were cloud comfortable, and we felt great. We loved it. We used some of these other tools like Inspector and S3 and QuickSight to help visualize and see our world. And it was a really great environment for us. We had a lot of fun. But I don't work at TRC anymore, right? Interesting things happen in the market. And one of the greatest things that happened, I told you, I hinted a little bit, TRC was a private company when that slide said it was publicly traded. In, I think it was 2015, TRC acquired Wilbur's. And in 1 year's time, there's this ENR, if you guys are engineering construction companies, ENR ranks the top 500 organizations in the world. In the world. And TRC was ranked 30th. Overall, best design firms in the US. And in 1 year, with the technology differentiation, clearly it was me, they went to 20. And they were killing it. And they said so much of it had to do with technology and innovation and helping embrace our customers and getting them closer to us and making it a collaborative problem. And they said, cool, we're taking the company private. And when they took it private, our PE firm said, wait a minute, this technology could be a business unto itself. And sure enough, they transitioned us and moved us into Pivvot and what it is today. And Pivvot build software. That's all we do. We no longer sell T&M services, really, and we just build software, and we build it for the oil and gas industry, the electric transmission, rail industry, and now, back from that one server where we said, let's see what happens, we've built a business out of it. And so in this industry, we're now hosting our customers' data to protect our nation's infrastructure. And so we have new problems, right? Critical infrastructure protection is a big deal, right? You saw Die Hard, they blow up pipelines. That's a bad thing. And we manage that data, and we want to keep our infrastructure safe for our customers. We want to help protect all of the data around it, but we want to protect the environment, all of these things, right? So we take security and privacy very seriously for our customers. But now that we're a software company, we had a whole new set of problems. How do we be a software company? We've been all IT. How do we productize this stuff? How do we do this? And so as a startup, right, we got to challenge the world a little bit. And we built a new org chart. And this was it. So we started with this idea that product management should run everything. We call this our factory. This is absolutely our org chart. And our factory goes from product management, deciding what to build, when the priority, what the market needs to do, pushing it into Scrum Master, and letting DevOps and data take it on. Now you might say, why data, right? Well, the cool thing about our business, because I'm here and you're not, I can sell my business, is that we are not just software development. So it's not just dev and ops, we also have data. So we do data analytics work, and we bring the data with us, so you don't have to go get it. So we have an alternate roadmap for our data and data acquisition, as well as our software development lifecycle. So from that, we follow that process and get to test and deploy into customers. And the biggest problem with setting up this org chart is ego. Because we're all very proud professionals. We're really good at what we do. And we have this problem and idea that our problems are more important than everybody else's. Ops is more important than dev, and data is more important than everything. And it really took us to kind of have this conversation that it's not about the structure. It's not about who you report to, because that's timesheets and expense reports. It's about how do we organize ourselves to get things done. Why? Because speed. We needed to finish. We needed to build products, and that's what we did. To do so successfully, we had to have code. So this is not real code. You can take pictures of it. But it actually is real. It's not ours. So you can do whatever you want. But what's interesting about this story is that the IT team, the people who were MCSEs who could right-click out at anything, now write Docker files and CloudFormation scripts. This is code. And because it's code, we use the same tools, the same services, Bitbucket, Atlassian, and we protect it in that common way. And that's important to us, because you can't make DevOps happen. You can't get rid of developer ego or ops ego unless you speak a common language. And that common language to us was in code. And this is underscored so much in our success by IT people who were great MCSEs or CCNA types embracing writing code like this to bring our business together and empower us. And some really cool things have come out of that, right? CloudFormation, all of our infrastructure. Docker files, all of our servers and builds. That's our DR plan right there, right? Like, there it is. So there's some really interesting byproducts by embracing that from an ops perspective, but it also allows you to speak in a common language. I would have told you Docker is totally a dev fad, containerization's not real, and now that we've done it, we couldn't do without it. It is a huge part of our success in our business to build fast and do so. And I could talk for hours about containers because it's really changed our business in a really positive way. The other great thing was IT people are so used to being superheroes, right? You call us when things go bad, and we fix it, because that's what we do. And so we have these cool measures like RTO, recovery time objective. And our recovery time objective back in the day was like 2 hours, and we felt good about it. We were like, we can get an entire DR plan in 2 hours, you're welcome. And in the cloud, we started to, and with containers especially, we started to be like, we can do it a little faster than that now, right? So we can totally disrupt our environment. There's a guy up here who says I'm lying, and that's OK. But we can do it in about 20 seconds. We can entirely rebuild in about 20 seconds from a failed container or something like that. That's incredibly empowering, right? And it's not even why we did it. We didn't move here to try to get a better RTO. It just kind of happened because we embraced the new tool sets and we embraced the new technologies. But of course, there's also the security problem. As we started to integrate our ops team and getting closer to our dev team, we would still throw the fence over to security. And at the end of our development process, they're like, we built this, go secure it. And that's a really tough challenge. You have to integrate security into your CI/CD pipelines so that you build security inside. And that was an important artifact for us to really go and put security inline instead of at the end of the process. So we try to keep everything in that factory process if we can. And now our architecture looks something like this. Very simple. But what's important about it is on the right, that pink box is CloudFormation scripts, and we use Atlassian to go and deploy that code. Our cloud infrastructure gets deployed through a CI/CD pipeline. And then on our bottom, we were deploying software in containers. So Atlassian is where our code repo is, and we push it into Trend Micro has a smart check, so you can do pre-vulnerability checking. So before runtime, we can say, in our CI/CD pipeline, is it secure? What are the vulnerabilities? And what's great about that is we also run Trend Micro Deep Security on our instances that run ECS. And so if we find a vulnerability in Smart Check, through our CD pipeline, we can say, go ahead and smart patch that because we're not going to deal with the problem right now. We want the CI/CD pipeline to pass, so we can smart check it pre-runtime, and then when it's in runtime, we can have it secured. And this is more or less our microservices architecture for our entire organization. Everything we do, we try to follow this pattern: API gateway into a network load balancer, or application load balancer with multi-AZ containers and RDS instances on the back end. And we have rewritten all of it to get to that point. And it's allowed us incredible flexibility and incredible speed. And it's been a lot of fun to get to it. And it's funny how many lines and everything, graphs you build, and now you get to something like this. And it feels like, Back to the Future when he hits his head on the toilet and he has that line on his head. It feels kind of like that. Like I feel like I'm really drawn to this architecture, that it means something to me that we've gotten to this. So we went through these 3 stages, right? From cloud curious to cloud comfortable to cloud native. And now that we're cloud native, I can't imagine going back. And a true story is, before we left TRC, we were starting down this cloud native process. And we were on our way out, we were moving, and they were putting a new server in this office, the IT group was. And the IT group, this is after a year or 2, right? We had never hacked a server. And they were like, hey, you're there. Would you mind racking and stacking? We're like, yeah, no problem. And as we're doing it, me and this gentleman up here, we were like, this is terrible. I never want to do this again. And so we've committed never to buy a server again. Pivvot will never have a physical server if we can manage it, just because it's just unnecessary. So the 3 takeaways I wanted to just bring back up again was, transformation is possible. We've done it. We've gone through mergers and acquisitions along the way, but we've lived it, and we've survived, and I feel like we're better for it, right? We feel more valuable part of the business. We feel like we're providing value to our customers, and now we're building products. But it wasn't easy. We had to overcome a lot of challenges with customers and developers and all that kind of stuff to get to where we are today. But I really told you about, I wanted you to be prepared, and be prepared for what's next. Because we've built this architecture, we've got a great prototype architecture, we feel like we can move from firefighting to innovating. We don't have to worry about flexing our superhero muscles and building things. We actually can go and just build products that matter to our customers. And that is so much more fun. And when you go home, you get to see it. It's not about getting yelled at because a password didn't work, or rebooting a printer and getting printer jams stuck. And that's not IT. I'm passionate about using technology to make a difference that matters. And as I stand up here, I think just a shameless plug. It may sound like a lot of this was really easy, and I've told you because I'm amazing and I did all this. But that may or may not be true. So tomorrow in the Trend Micro booth at 2 or 3 or 1, I don't know, one of my senior engineers, the cloud architect, is going to tell his side of the story. And he's going to tell you where I may have lied along the way, because there's always some embellishments. But he'll have an opportunity to tell his side and the reality tomorrow in the Trend Micro booth. With that, I appreciate your time today, and I'm going to hand it back over to Mark to close us out.
Right on. Thank you, Jason. That was fantastic. Nice job. Nice job. All right. So as you heard from Jason's obviously unbiased in the trenches side, it's very easy. It took him 40 minutes and complete transformation, right? No, but I mean, it's nice to hear a real example, because if you watched Andy Jassy keynote this morning, he was talking a lot about transformation, and you hear it come up again and again. And a lot of people are discussing, okay, well, why is it so important, or how do we get there? If it's just technology. A server's a server, whether it's called an instance or a virtual machine or something like that. And there is a very, you can get a long way in the cloud by using, traditional methods and just making it work in AWS. That will work, and you will be happy with it. But that's the equivalent of taking your race car to drop the kids off at school. You'll get there, but you're not really taking advantage of what you have access to. And while hearing the story is fantastic, and understanding you can make this transition, what you just heard in 40 minutes took years. Right? Years of hard work, years of ups and downs, and a lot of buy-in. Now, the good news is, where you are on your cloud journey today, you can keep pushing to get to that cloud native. And there are tools out there to help you. So what I want to do is highlight some of those that are freely available to you from AWS that you may or may not have heard of. So the first one I want to highlight is the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework. Has anybody heard of this before? Couple people, that's good. How many of you had sat down and read the 56-page white paper that is the actual framework? Basically, one person. And you're brave. Very good. That's awesome. Because why would you ever sit down and do that to yourself and read through this massive white paper? You absolutely should. It's phenomenal. It is a crime that not many people know about the Cloud Adoption Framework. So at its heart, it is a large white paper. It was started out of the AWS Professional Services wing to help people understand this whole cloud thing. So it's actually broken down into what they call perspectives. And so they have a business perspective, governance, and people. And the idea with each perspective is that you walk through identifying stakeholders in your business, your desired business outcomes, and your existing processes that are in place. And then you start to work through and say, well, how is this change? How is this going to change? How might this change when we start to take advantage of different technologies? So you heard through Jason's story how they started to think of things differently as they started to get more and more exposure. Right? So now, ending a statement saying, we never want to deal with physical stuff again if we don't have to, is where you want to be. But how do you get there? That's a huge cultural change. Well, the perspectives in the Cloud Adoption Framework help you map that out ahead of time so that you're not kind of struggling through and hitting these roadblocks if you can help it. Because it's literally built from the experience of thousands of companies that have gone through this already. There's 3 more perspectives that match up, and they're more on the technology side. So the platform, so getting away from owning physical servers, from owning data centers, from setting up traditional networking structures, things like that. Security is a key perspective as well, because it absolutely changes when you move into the cloud, because now you're dealing with a shared responsibility model. And I will tell you, as a security pro, it is really hard to get over that initial bump of saying, wait a minute, I'm ceding half of my responsibilities to somebody else. And you should still verify those by using the compliance frameworks and such. But then you kind of realize how freeing that can be. You're like, wait a minute, I can get rid of half my work? That's a much better way of looking at it. Shared responsibility means I can pay AWS to do something that I don't really want to do because it's not pushing my business forward, right? And then finally, you've got the operations. And the same thing applies for operations. Shared responsibility is not a security thing. It's a just getting things done thing. So it covers operations as well. And from all of these perspectives, you work through the program in the framework, and you end up with an action plan. And that action plan is essentially your map to go from wherever you are now, whether that's partially into the cloud or purely on premises, to fully into the cloud or however far in you want to be comfortable. But the idea here is that this is a readable plan you've worked through with the stakeholders for various areas in your business. And at the end of the day, you've started that buy-in process. You heard it from Andy this morning that you need executive buy-in to set those ambitious goals to get things moving. The Cloud Adoption Framework is how you can work through that. It's literally like a step-by-step. This is how you go talk to people and start having a workshop and start working through things. It's freely available. It is available through AWS Professional Services if you want help. You probably don't need it. If you can get yourself through that 50-some page white paper, you're good. But you can bring them in to help facilitate, and it's freely available there. The link is in on that first slide. It'll be up on SlideShare as well. It is worth taking the time. There's a couple talks from last year's reInvent on the adoption framework as well, and that really gets you there. The next thing I want to talk to you about is this concept that AWS started introducing this year. You're going to hear it popping up more and more, called modern application development. So this, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on whether you suffer from insomnia or not, is not a massive PDF. It is a far more digestible set of little example architectures, quick little videos and things like that. And essentially what modern application development is defining where you want to be. So in that final set of slides of cloud native architecture where you're almost running nothing and everything's in a container, all your infrastructure is code, but how do you get there from that, maybe you have more than one EC2 instance. And if it was me, I never would have told them how much it cost. I would have just been like, yeah, I took your 20 grand and look at all the cool stuff and don't worry about why we all have new PCs and cool tech and all that extra stuff. But we delivered. So the modern application development is really about realizing that you have stuff today. Anyone in here has literally started a new business within like the last 6 months? You're like a brand new startup? One person. And in a green shirt, which is awesome because you are the only person dealing with green space. You have the luxury of making excellent cloud-native choices out of the gate. Everybody else has stuff to deal with. Your business is running on it. You have legacy issues. You have legacy apps that you need to eventually bring forward. And if you try to go to your CFO or to your COO and say, hey, you know that thing that's working and is really critical to our business? I'm going to rewrite it. Not going to happen. You need to move it forward. That's what modern application is all about. It is identifies 6 key properties of a modern application. So it's secure, it's resilient, it's elastic, it's modular, it's automated, and it's interoperable. I love how vague interoperable goes, but essentially it means you should have standardized data in and out. But these are attributes that if you sat down to design something today, like the lucky guy in the front, you would say, yes, I want to make sure it's resilient. I want to make sure it scales and I don't have to worry about it. You would build something very cool based around a serverless architecture, most likely, right? Because you don't have legacy stuff you have to worry about. But the thing about the modern application development framework, about the concept here, is that it says, well, there's really 4 categories that your application can fall into. The first is simply rehosting it. So the good old forklift. I'm going to take it as is. If it's running on Windows 2008 for another 7 days while support is still available, I'm going to take it as is, and I'm going to drop it into the AWS Cloud. And you know what? There's benefit to that. You will get some benefits. You'll be able to back it up easier. You can do an EBS snapshot, and you've got some backup. You can put it in an auto-scaling group with a min and a max of 1 and 1, and it will automatically be reinstantiated anytime there's an error. So there's advantages to rehosting, and at least you're in the cloud. You start to get advantage of IAM, CloudWatch logs, a whole bunch of these cool things, right? But then you could take the next step, and you could re-platform it. So you could take your Windows 2008 build, you could move it to 2016. Right? You can make a couple extra adjustments and say, well, we're going to save our data somewhere else as opposed to on that one server. So you can start to make minor changes. Or you can get into a significant rewrite. You can start to refactor things. And this is where you sort of went from on the cloud curious stage, where you went from one monolithic piece and started to break it up a little bit, right? But you do it over time because you need to keep the lights on. You need to keep running. And then finally get to the last which I did not plan this. It's just the name of it in the conference, in the concept, is that you reinvent it. That's the full rewrite, right? But if you've gone through these stages, a full rewrite is meaning just taking those last few pieces and taking advantage of some new services, right? So maybe some cool things that got announced today, or maybe at Werner's keynote on Thursday. So the 4 main processes, and is part of the modern application development stuff on the AWS website. They have examples of each of these, and they help walk you through how to do it for your own applications. So how to identify how you'd be a good target for replatforming an app versus just rehosting it, right? Because the reality is we all have these legacy applications that we have to deal with. As much as we don't want to, we still have to. And then the last area I wanted to highlight for you is what makes this all possible, right? So Jason was talking about how he's using Atlassian to deploy his code. He talked about infrastructure as code and CloudFormation. AWS has a set of these services as well. There is a challenge to the naming scheme. You'll see that on the next little bit. But they have an example project. It's a quick start. It's a really cool thing if you haven't set this up in your organization yet, if you're just starting on your DevOps journey. If you go to that URL, they are going to walk you through how to set up a CI/CD pipeline. So a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline within AWS. Very simple, very straightforward. They explain what each piece is doing, how they connect together. And essentially what it is it's stitching together a number of these services. Now, no one chuckled at the first one, Cloud9, which means A, either you're all using it and loving it, or B, you've probably never heard of it. I'm going to probably say B. Cloud9 is AWS's IDE. It's an integrated development environment that lives in a browser. Very handy because it links into a bunch of stuff. But I always like to include it because it is really cool for doing some basic development stuff when you're on the go. Because as much as I didn't know that you took that long to switch to a Mac, if I had known, I would have given a different answer of whether I would have come on stage or not. But some of the cool kids now, we're gone post-Mac, and we're just like iPad only now, or Chromebook only. So, you're still you get a little ways to go. But Cloud9's handy in that case. But the rest of the code services, and unfortunately code pipeline is actually one of the services, but these form a pipeline together. You have code repositories, you have a build server, you have deployment. Pipeline is the service that actually manages all of these together. But these are native AWS services that are available to you in, I believe, almost every single region around the world. So if you want to start kicking the tires about automating your deployments, running automated tests, we saw in Jassie's keynote this morning, a brand new machine learning service called Code Guru that fits in here as well, that does automated machine learning driven code reviews. right? And you can click that in so that you're getting security checks, you're getting basic code quality checks into this concept. And it all kind of clicks together with that one pipeline, right? So if you don't have a pipeline today, go to that page and start to experiment a little bit. And then you may want to pull some of these AWS services out and replace it. Like code commit, very commonly, people use GitHub instead, right? Or you could use Bitbucket or whatever makes the most sense for you. But the concept is what you need to be implementing, is that if I make a change, I make it at the source, and systems push it out, right? Because again, if you don't have to do the work, why would you do the work? Fundamentally lazy as developers, which in business speaks means that we are constantly optimizing performance and outcomes. Which is a fancy way of saying I just don't like doing work if I don't have to. So there's a couple areas where you can leverage stuff that's freely available or very low cost for these services from AWS to get you up and running to start taking your journey. Because hearing the story from somebody who's actually gone through it, from Jason, seeing that march from Wilbur's to TRC to Pivvot is one thing. But what you really need to do, and what I really truly hope you do, is take what you've learned, hearing Jason's experience, understanding that it's possible in a very conservative vertical, right? This is not like he's like, oh, we're in fast fashion and we're used to delivering new outfits every 15 days, so we have to move quick. If he can work through this and do it in his environment, you guys can do it in yours. And I think that's really key. Is I hope you take this away, you look at some of these offerings from AWS that will help you work this path, and then you actually start to make that transformation. Because the technology, it turns out, is actually pretty easy. It's that people side that's extremely difficult to go, because it takes a really long time to change people's minds. Sometimes you can't change their mind and you have to change people, and that works, and sometimes it doesn't, right? So the advantage here, or the key here, is to actually get started. So take that step. Jason and I are going to be around for a little bit answering some questions. As you mentioned, this, for the record, I probably should have told you up front, but we don't run our sponsored sessions like other sponsors. We don't like to talk about ourselves. You can come talk to the Trend Micro team at 2820 in the Venetian. They'll tell you about all the product stuff. We just really want to take the opportunity to teach. So Jason and I will be here to talk about it, but Brett's going to be giving a demo on his side and give you the actual truth of the story tomorrow, if you want to swing by. Thank you very much for your time. Jason and I very much appreciate it. Please remember to fill in your evaluations, not just for our session, but for every session you attend at reInvent in the mobile app. It's very important. Annie and Jill and the team use it to figure out where to put people next year, what kind of sessions that you guys like, because reInvent is still very much audience-driven. Thank you very much. Have a great day.